Hello and welcome to the WARC Podcast. My name's David Tiltman and today we are talking about the world of strategy and some top tips for the next generation of strategists from a seasoned pro. We have with us today Charles Wigley. Now, I first met Charles when he was chairman at BBH Asia based in Singapore, and that followed a career in agency side planning and strategy that took him from London to Hong Kong to Australia before 20 years in Singapore. Now, he even acted as jury president for our very own WARC Prize for Asian Strategy back in the day. Now, a few years ago, when he left BBH, Charles wrote a post called 100 Things a Planner Should Know. Now, that became a bit of a viral hit. We featured it on WARC, and it's one of those things that has kept resurfacing ever since as a kind of field manual for young strategists. He's now turned that post into a really beautiful little book, so we thought we should get him on the pod to talk about some of that advice, how he applied it in his own career, and what it means in the current industry climate. We'll bring Charles on in a moment, but first, a word from our sponsors.
Lions Learning doesn't just teach, it transforms. Like the Master of Advertising Effectiveness led by James Herman, which gives you the evidence-based principles to create campaigns that deliver commercial results. This 6-week online program equips you with a complete understanding of effectiveness principles that make your work more consistent and successful. The October cohort is filling fast. Ready to go? Visit learning.lions.co today.
Charles, welcome to the WARC Podcast.
Thank you, David.
I gave your sort of career background up front there, but what are you actually up to now? Because it's been 5 years now since you left BBH.
That's right. I mean, essentially consulting. So doing projects with clients, mainly direct to clients as opposed to agencies, working on core brand strategy, a lot of work around kind of core brand stories, actually, the fundamentals of how a business pitches itself, and then bringing in other partners, creative agencies, media agencies, etc., to execute off that.
What are some of the things you might have worked on over the years that you're particularly proud of, just so people get a sense of the kind of thing you've worked on?
Okay, that's interesting. Going back to Australia, we came up with James Squire's beer. I was working at a little agency there called Principles, and working with Lion Nathan Brewery as was, and they wanted a new premium brew. And wonderful story, James Squire was the original convict brewer of Sydney. We latched onto his story and we produced everything from the packaging through to the ads. And the packaging was his story. So every 6-pack you bought had another aspect of his slightly embroidered story of the origins. I think it's now the biggest craft beer in Australia, which is
fantastic.
kind of nice. It was quite successful. Foolishly, we did it on a fee. So we got absolutely no recompense for the scale of the brand now. But I mean, that's the common industry problem.
Well, I'm sure we can talk about that as we go through the podcast. But okay, I mentioned the post in the background, that 100 Things a Planner Should Know. Now you wrote that, I think it was back in 2020. Just describe what the motivation for writing that was and why you felt that was the time and that was the advice you needed to give.
Well, I think the brutal truth is, David, I was bullied into writing it. It was the middle of COVID and I was leaving BBH. I knew I was leaving, but we couldn't go anywhere. So I was still in Singapore and I was still officially working at BBH. And I was actually spending quite a lot of the time going for gentle walks and having gin and tonics and stuff, which was spotted in the end because every week I ran a new business call. And in the end, all my partners from around the region kind of went, Charles, what are you up to? Could you leave us with something? And I kind of went, well, what do I leave you with? I've left you with endless pitch documents, endless training documents. You don't need more. No, just write something. So I got slightly cornered. And one of the guys on the call, lovely chap called Sid, went, look, I've seen something by an architect called 100 Things every young architect should know. I think you should do something similar. So I got cornered into it. And I thought, oh, God, I'm going to have to do this now. And I sat down and started writing. And then I found all of a sudden I had loads to say. And, I think it took a day and a half, 2 days to write the whole thing. It just flowed straight out.
You got to 100 without, having to...
any bother at all. I had to stop myself ranting any further. So it just came very quickly. Another day editing it down, etc. So that's the truth about the origins. And then we put it out. You guys picked it up. Various Campaign, a day, but all these magazines kind of picked it up, and it went quite viral at the time.
Yeah, and as I said at the start, it's still referenced. I still see people sort of bringing it up. Just in case anyone hasn't read it, and we'll come on to the book in a moment, but the book is based off of that list. It's not a sort of long form thing, is it? It's sort of each one is like a little saying or almost like a little idiom or something, a little thing to remember.
Yeah.
Rather than it being a sort of 100 sort of, chapters, it's 100 little sayings.
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, it is sort of 100 kind of principles and thoughts as opposed to spelling it all out. I'm kind of leaving the audience a bit to complete it. And each one actually is illustrated by the kind of wonderful Martin Galton, who's done 100 very funny cartoons that go with it.
So this has taken that original post and then actually created a really lovely book. And I should mention the title. The title is Chaz's 100 Things a Planner Should Know. And yes, it's illustrated. So
illustrated.
Just talk through that.
It's an unserious, serious book. It's an unserious planner's book. It's sort of a toilet book, isn't it? You could put it by the side. It's a planner's toilet book. You're going to put it on any ad person's, but you pick it up and you leaf through it.
Do you know what it is? It is the perfect stocking filler for any young strategist.
I would say to every head of planning out there that how can your department live without this at Christmas? I mean, it's the price of a beer in a central London pub.
Yeah, but
this is not even accounts will let this through,
and I love it. The cover is even designed as a creative brief. It is,
and that was Paul Belford, the designer, who actually Martin did the illustrations, and Paul, he's quite a well-known designer. He actually put the book together. He said, "I've got this idea for the front cover. It's a brief. It's a knowing joke." And we kind of let's go with that then.
So we'll put a link to the book in the show notes. But where can people get it? Just so
it's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon. Okay, great. So clearly, podcast is a very bad medium for trying to explain any of the illustrations. So we're not going to do that.
No.
What we are going to do, I've picked out a few of the pieces of advice that stood out to me,
Sure.
And what I'd just like to do is sort of get you to expand on them a little bit and talk about how we can sort of think about these things in the current climate, because it's a tough time out there for a lot of strategy teams. Strategy is going through a bit of a period of change as AI comes in, as the shape of the industry changes. So I'd love to sort of get your thoughts, both of where that sort of saying comes from, but also how we might apply it in the current climate. I'm going to start with piece of advice number 1, because this is one that is a very simple sentence, but there's a lot that hangs off of it, which is your definition of the problem is likely to be more important than your definition of the answer. So what do you mean? What do you mean by that? Just tell us.
What are you talking about now? It's something I learned the hard way over the years, actually. I mean, it's the old kind of Einstein cliche. You had an hour to save the world. What would you do? Well, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about what the issue is. So I absolutely nailed the problem before I came up with a solution, because I think if you have a great problem definition, then it's easier to answer it in the right way. And too often it's skipped past, or, well, the brief from the client said the issue is this. Really find out what the issue is. I think there's a bigger kind of process or organizational issue lurking in here as well. I think too often planners feel they have to come up with some kind of fait accompli. Here is the brief, and it's going to reveal like a rabbit out of a hat. 9 times out of 10, it then gets argued about, and people don't like it because they haven't seen it before, and the creative team gets shirty, et cetera, because they haven't been taken through the thinking. But actually, it's probably not the best way to work. And I increasingly think of planners, and this is the way I operate it, as kind of orchestrators of the team. Yeah. So your job at the planner is not just to nail it yourself, to absolutely be the hero. I mean, you can try if you're a genius and you're an egotist, but it's kind of better and it's more useful for you as a planner to really understand the issue, the objective, the brand, and what the problem is you're trying to tackle, and then come up with different possibilities for solutions, and then discuss that with the team that are actually going to work on it. And you'll find all of a sudden people come to that in a completely different mindset, because they're going, all right, okay, there's 2 or 3 start points. Let's chat about those. In the same session, you can chat about other options to solve it. Everybody feels that they've contributed, which is important psychologically. And quite often you go, right, that's the way forward. And then people can leave that meeting knowing, I've got to solve that. And I think the other issue is when planners write, the classic propositional-based brief, the answer almost inevitably has to be an ad, because the proposition says, what do you want to say? And you have to kind of then say it. And so the obvious form is that versus going, we're solving this problem. How can we solve it? What are the different ways? Is it something you do in store? Is it a charitable event? Is it a stunt? Is it whatever? So the answer is not necessarily the obvious. So it kind of helps in both ways, really.
And is there a sort of obvious example from your own experience where by defining the problem, you've got to a better solution than you would have done if you just...
Yeah, it's a good question, which I should have thought about more, David. I mean, I think there's loads of kind of simple examples. I used to work on Levi's jeans for years. And I remember once we had a discussion where in Japan, they're about to start to take the female audience and 501 jeans, the classic, seriously, and actually recut them perfectly for the female form, and specifically the Japanese female form, which obviously is like different from the Western female form. And the planners in our Japan office did lots of really interesting kind of ethnographic work about the psychology of Japanese women, etc., and about how Japanese women become far more independent, far bolder. So all this stuff was really interesting. And the brief we ended up with, I remember sitting in a room with the creative teams, and it was all about, I can't remember exactly, but something about, the new Japanese woman is bold and adventurous, all of that. And I remember one of the creatives, I think it was the creative director, I think it was Steve, just went, yeah, but Chaz, I know they've written this, and I totally get it, it's true. But these jeans have just been recut for women. And Japanese people don't know that. And Japanese women don't know that. And actually, we go, oh, shit, that's the right answer. That's the obvious answer. But sometimes the obvious is a good one because you're assuming knowledge. Japanese women weren't going to buy 501s in Japan because they said, these people don't provide product for me. So actually the answer was, right, that's the fundamental issue. They don't believe that it's worth walking into the shop in the first place. Just go out there. And the line was literally recut for women. But it was superb art direction. It was fantastic. It was kind of multi-award winning Cannes stuff. It was just, it was a huge campaign. The art, again, we're not videoing this, so I can't show you this, but they're absolutely beautiful. But it nailed it, and it struck me then, which was exactly that point. We, and I was in charge of the planning team, hadn't analysed the problem well enough. We hadn't taken a step back and gone, like, what really is the issue? The real issue was women weren't going into the stores because they had this barrier that we don't believe you supply products for me. So I think that's a very simple kind of learning example of that from kind of 25 years ago.
But again, just being really, really clear on what the problem is. And the problem might not be what's in the brief.
No, exactly. And the brief was full of fascinating facts about Japan, Japanese women, what style they're into, who were their influencers, all of this stuff. It's all great stuff. But actually, it didn't tackle the fundamental issue, which a discussion got to. I sort of ended up doing briefs which were the problem and then 4 or 5 options around the outside for every brief. We used to call them the fried egg brief because it's just an interesting way of...
The problem is the yolk.
The problem is the yolk, and then you populate around the outside. I mean, I think it's fascinating the way agency teams demand creative people come up with, go into a review, there's always, 3 teams and lots of options on the wall. But agency teams are also kind of hesitant for strategy departments to go, right, we could tackle this in a number of ways, let's discuss it. So it's like, hang on, if you want one from one group, surely you should want some options from the other group as well. Also, it helps with clients because you can go back at that stage and go, look, we've thought more about this. What's the real, it's this. And these are solutions, possible ones. We prefer these 2. Is it okay for us to explore those? So you narrow down a little bit more with the client group. So again, they feel on board and they feel they can buy something braver out of that.
And I guess one of the observations of the modern advertising landscape is that a lot of the work has become more executional. The briefs have become more executional, that sort of the options for strategists to get involved upstream are harder. Is this still something that a strategist in an agency could spend time really thinking about, or is the sort of modern communication style much more, quick turnaround, very executional?
I think they've got to kind of do it to do their jobs, really. I don't think it's any more complicated than that. I mean, I think one of the other points you highlighted was, about getting out there.
Well, let's
into the
get on.
world.
Let's get on to that one, because that's the second one.
Okay.
So number 13 in the book is to understand people. You need to see the world through their eyes. That means empathizing with them. That's your job.
Indeed, it is.
Tell us more.
Empathy, kind of an important thing. I mean, it's a bit of a bugbear of mine, but not anymore, because I'm not in the agency world, so I don't see this every day. But I think planners have sort of become chained to their desks, churning out PowerPoint documents. That seems to be the modus operandi. Who will write the document? It could be any document. It's always the planner. And you kind of go, hang on a second. Is it impossible for anybody else to do this for a start? But secondly, that's not ultimately the planner's job. The planner has to, and planners, the origin of it with JWT and BMP in the UK was the consumers becoming more diverse. We've got to get out there and understand them. Society isn't quite as cohesive, isn't quite as obviously generational. We don't quite know what's going on anymore. So the real role of the planner has to be to understand the audience, in addition, obviously, to understanding the problem. But the primary role is you've got to get out there. You've got to be in the market, talking to people. And I think that's all but disappeared in a lot of agencies.
Yeah, we have our recent future of strategy report. I mean, it just really shows the how rare it is for sort of qual research, in-person research to take place. It's become the sort of exception rather than the rule.
Yeah, and when it is done, it's always then, we'll hire a research company to do it.
Yeah,
as opposed to some of the most useful planning I've ever done was actually just personally going out and talking to people, because that is the way you understand where their heads are at, how they actually see the world versus how you see the world. I think there's also a really dangerous kind of cocktail in the UK agency world, which is everybody now has a degree or 2 degrees and they're thoroughly middle class and liberal. It's a real issue.
Yes, I can see that. Yeah,
I don't know.
I only have 1 degree, by the way. That's
okay. We'll forgive you for that 1 degree. When I started in the late 80s, the agency world was a real mix, and I'm not talking kind of diversity in the sense everybody talks about it now, but it was kind of a mix of Oxbridge and the working class. Kind of very different people that had left school at 16, worked there on other things, or gone to art school, come through that, and then Oxbridge types and the other, and it was a mix of people, and you got different conversations. But I think there is a danger now that there is a sort of bubble that's emerged of the same kind of people, and I don't think that's helpful. There's, have you heard of a research agency called Meet the 85%?
Yes, Mark Hadfield.
Yeah, I don't know him personally. I know his wife. She used to work at BBH, but I think his point and what he's doing, I mean, I think on his website it says proudly based in Northumberland, which kind of is a marker from the first line of the website. And it's all about ethnography and being in field and doing that and going, hang on a sec, you've got to understand where these things are coming from.
And actually, I'm back to the future strategy report here, but we feature Mark in that, and I think one of the points he makes is that now more than ever, at a time when everyone's got access to the same large language models churning out, built on the same sorts of data, actually this is a competitive advantage. Like having that, he calls it guardians of reality, I think, and actually having that sort of connection to the end customer is it's not just part of the job, it's what gives a strategist a sort of an advantage.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think if you end up working abroad, it's an even bigger issue, because national cultures and ethnographic cultures are very different from each other.
Yeah,
and just because people dress the same, I think it's one of the points I'm making, doesn't mean to say they think the same. So, there's that kind of global youth culture and everybody's connected. Yeah, sure. People quite often do look remarkable. They're buying the same streetwear brands. That doesn't mean in any way they think the same way about their lives, their parents, their job prospects. None of it.
You worked in Asia for a long time. So was there a sort of moment when you had that sort of realization or something where when you prodded under the hood of something, you found very different thought processes or assumptions?
Yeah, definitely. I think when I first moved to Asia, it was Hong Kong, and I was like about 5-6 years in. And I was the only planner in an agency in Hong Kong, which was Bates, Bacchus-Biergovel Bates. Remember them? That really is ancient.
This is ancient, yes.
That's ancient kind of archaeology of the business. And I was the only planner, and I kind of ended up doing all the pitches and everything. And I was tremendously arrogant. I was a fool. Although we did some fantastic work, I don't think I took the time to really dig down into the culture of how people see the world there properly, how Cantonese people see it. I then went to Australia, which is essentially a kind of Irish, English, Americanized version of UK culture, and then came back to Singapore. And that's where I started getting more involved. You know, you're older, you're a bit less arrogant, and you kind of go, right, I really need to understand what's going on here. And you start reading a lot more. So I always advise people going, well, read things like, Gert Hofstede's study of the world in terms of the data on how different cultures see themselves in relation. So individuality versus collectivism, which sounds, again, slightly cliche, but the truth is our notion of the world being highly individuated is a minority view. You go to Asia, no. I see myself far more in connection with the people around me, and their views are far more important to me, which I think is fascinating. So, stuff like in a lot of Asian markets, people's in-groups are smaller, friendship groups are smaller, but they're far deeper.
Yeah.
Whereas Westerners like you and I will have very broad friendship groups, but they're far shallower. And so all these things you start to pick up and learn, the importance of public display and public status. And actually, ironically, as a product of that things themselves aren't important. It's what they say about you. So, people in America and the UK, they give their cars nicknames. We've got a Volkswagen called Deirdre or something like that, a Beetle. Won't get anybody in China calling their car Deirdre, Margaret. No, it's a car. And it's a car. Now, hopefully it's got a good badge, because that projects a degree of an image of success. Now, that sounds a bit blunt. And obviously, as markets develop, it gets far more nuanced. So all of a sudden, no, you might be, slightly subtler about it, but you're still playing that kind of game. So, there's all kinds of fascinating stuff. And how people read communications is different as well.
Well, we're on culture. So let's jump to number 33, which is culture tends to layer rather than replace. I thought this was a very sort of cryptic one. So tell me what you.
Oh, was it?
Well, maybe I didn't understand it, but you tell me what you meant by it.
Well, I remember in the 80s and the 90s, there was a lot about, it was a real kind of cultural fear, the McDonald'sization of the world.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes.
Now, the truth is that McDonald's has gone everywhere, and it's done tremendously well everywhere. But actually, if you look at what they serve in different places, it's all tweaked around the world, because food is such a fundamentally culturally dependent thing that they're successful in Singapore with a different menu. Now, it still has some of the classics in there, but they tune the sauces, they tune the specials, the breakfast's different, and you get that in every market and around the world. So the original kind of meme, as it were, about, McDonald's is taking over the world, this is Western Empire, it's just not true, because it's not commercially viable. But I think people go, if let's say you are that young Hong Konger, and you're they're young Singaporean, young Chinese, you're increasingly exposed to a lot of influences from, let's say, the US or Europe, but a lot of influences South Korea and Japan. And you pick up all of these things. They don't replace your core identity, but they will start to layer
on top.
Yeah, and I think Martin, when he was doing his illustration, I told him the story of my barber here, who's he's a Muslim guy, big beard, Arsenal fan, really into certain things, does Turkish haircuts. I mean, it's just these layers of cultural influence. He's of, I think, Pakistani origin. He's doing Turkish haircuts. He's very London. It's a melange. So people shouldn't be black and white about what happens. So essentially, Westernization hasn't happened. I think the global political situation suggests quite strongly that. It's something Americans never get.
Yeah.
Because their economy is so huge and so powerful, they assume the world is them.
Right, let's move on to the next piece of advice. So this is number 15. You will be drawn into the black hole of conformity without even knowing it. Start projects with a competitive review. So tell me about the black hole of conformity.
Well, it's very easy. We've all worked on stuff. You go, I've cracked this. This is great. It's all about this. I think this is the key theme. I think we should be working around this area. And then a couple of days later, you see somebody else in the same category is doing exactly the same thing. It's very easy to end up thinking you've got to something fresh and not. So always start by just looking at the category, looking at what's going on. I mean, clearly the car brands in the world have completely forgotten about this obvious point, to the point where, they're kind of urban SUVs. All the ads now from all the brands look exactly the same. And I think they have the same casting of kind of good-looking early 30s women. The same group of people are acting in them. It's deep farce almost.
And they're all filmed on the same roads at the same hour of the
it's
of the
always
day.
Somewhere around here. It's like Victoria, isn't it? It's sort of blanked out to make it look a little bit slicker. So it could be anywhere in the world. There's no reference point for you to hang on to. So it's a very simple point. Just start by looking at what other people are doing to understand that. And to see how you can either be different from it at a fundamental level. You may not be able to, but if you can't be that, at least be distinctive from it in your approach.
I think that point about distinct, that's a really key point here, isn't it? And I think it's something that, again, coming back to Future Strategy Report, we're seeing a lot of sort of current strategists really feel like strategy has to push in a distinctive direction. It's not just down to the sort of creative to invent distinctiveness. It's about having a sort of distinct direction, a sort of clear vision of the future that a brand can sort of work towards. And how do you bust out of that conformity is something that strategy really needs to be the sort of first step in that direction.
Yeah. I mean, it always helps if you're working upstream with clients, because the truth is that if a company boss knows the direction they're going, quite often that is quite a unique point of view on the world. And if you can latch onto that and then drive that through, that's enormously helpful. It's harder the lower, kind of the more downstream you are.
Yes, of course. Of course. I mean, even on that sort of creative side, there's we mentioned the car ads. I think it was Adam Morgan and Eat Big Fish called it the Mephisto waltz, where creatively brands in a category, because they're always looking at each other, tend to sort of circle around the same set of ideas or the same set of creative thinking, so that everything ends up looking the same, which is why when a challenger comes in with perhaps a sort of founder's viewpoint or a different, almost like a different starting point, it does seem to bust the category open creatively, because they haven't spent, 10 years just watching.
I love the Mephisto dance. Jim Carroll called it the wind tunnel effect. Because you remember that point where cars all started looking the same?
Yes.
It was because their process, all of a sudden they got wind tunnels. So every major manufacturer, and also all cars started to blend into the same thing.
All the edges got
so you went from 70s, early 80s cars, which looked very, you could always tell a brand at a distance without seeing a logo, because it was a shape thing. And then all of a sudden...
No, you can't. You
couldn't.
You can't now. I think that feeds into the sort of age of average, which is Alex Murrell's.
Some great
phrasing.
Visual stuff I've seen online about
exactly
how
logos look the same.
Everything looks the same. And there's somebody's done some stuff, you're right, with logos, showing how, and luxury brands, they've all converged to the same spot.
Yeah, what started in tech has suddenly become this much bigger thing.
Have you ever heard of ice cream van theory?
No, tell me.
I don't know if this is true, but a writer friend of mine came out. So imagine a park. It's perfectly symmetrical for the sake of this discussion. It's got 4 entrances. It's a sunny day, so your local ice cream van, you're selling ice cream. You go, right, I'm out. So you go and you go to the park. The park's crisscrossed by roads and quite symmetrical. Where do you park? You're the first van there.
Oh, at which entrance?
Would you park at an entrance? You park in the middle? Where do you park? I'm asking you.
Oh, you're asking me?
Yes, it's an interactive session.
For my deep experience of parking ice cream vans, for the sake of argument, I'll park in the middle, because that's probably closest to everybody in the park.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in truth, if the park's symmetrical and it's relatively flat, you could park anywhere. Because if you want an ice cream, you have to come to that one van.
Yes.
So you can actually say, you can be anywhere. If you're more ice cream vans go, right, it's a big day for sales, they're coming out. You're the second van. Where do you park?
As far away from the first one as possible, I guess.
No, you park right next to it.
Right, because everyone's already going,
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. You're the third van. Where do you park?
Well, probably next to the other two if they're parked right next to each other.
No.
Oh.
So you walked into that. I knocked it up.
So I think what we've learned here is I should never go into the ice cream retail business.
But you'd park away from the other two because all of a sudden, assuming all ice creams are roughly the same, if you go, well, I'll go for that corner, I will own everybody closest to me. Those two can own that bit. And all of a sudden you'll find those other two ice cream fans will split up so that all of a sudden they'll start differentiating geographically. So they each try and own a third of the park. So I'll go down that lane, he goes up there, she goes down there. And that's what happens you get in markets that are duopolies. You get a lot of duopolies in Australia. Airlines, chickens, would you believe? Bread. And then a third challenger player comes, and that's when you get differentiation.
Interesting.
Because it forces the two main players to think slightly differently. And the challenger can be very obviously different.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of holds water as a theory. It's
really interesting. One. It's really interesting. Yes. Well, okay. I'll go and brush up on my ice cream distribution. Yeah. Right. Let's move on to the next one. So I thought this was a really interesting one and very, very relevant at the moment. Advertising in its current forms may well be a declining force, but brands and creativity won't be. Know where your future lies. Discuss.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned it at the start, didn't you? The industry is under a fair amount of pressure. I think especially, if you actually look at the numbers, advertising spend goes up hugely globally every year.
Oh, yeah. I mean
massively.
This is the sort of paradox of the industry is that there has never been more money spent on advertising. And to some degree, advertising has bust its relationship with GDP growth. It's actually been growing faster than GDP growth. For a whole host of reasons that will be an entirely different podcast. Yeah. But the gains, the additional money going into advertising are not being captured by what has been known as the advertising industry.
Yeah, precisely that. I mean, you can see it. I mean, that as you say, absolutely is the paradox. Because more and more of it's going straight to the platforms, more and more of it is going to be utterly mechanized. So you're ending up in a world where the pure brand portion of it and the agencies that like to deal with that, it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller and harder. Now, if you're a client, you've now got a lot more levers. When I started in the business, actually, the truth is above-the-line advertising was the biggest impact on your business you could do as a marketer. Mm-hmm. It really was big. But now there's multiple levers and the relative effect of that is less. So they've started allocating money on many other things. So I think as a planner, you've just to be cognizant of the fact that brands aren't going anywhere because as humans, we need social markers, we need simplifiers for our choice. The mechanisms by which they are built are changing. And I think that's just the point that is at the heart of that. So get to understand other areas of brand building, get to understand design, get to understand how the world's going in terms of automation. All these things you need to know about and kind of embrace.
And from a strategist point of view, I keep plugging the WARC Future Strategy Report. This is top of mind at the moment because we've just been looking at this. Is there an argument that if you're a young strategist, you should be trying to expose yourself to lots of different flavors of strategy? And what I mean by that is, should you try and spend time looking at comm strategy or upstream brand strategy or strategy in a PR agency? Or does it help to get that breadth of exposure?
I think MediaComm strategy is a different specialism at heart. It's heavily related, but that's a lifetime of work to learn about that. Certainly go upstream because if you start to understand the fundamentals of how you build and position a brand, you are in a far stronger place in terms of that. I would also, I talked about design. I'd start to learn a lot about influencer marketing. Yes. It's gone through a boom. It'll go through a bit of a bust, but it'll carry on. And the role of PR in building brands. So in your 20s, focus on all the different levers
And that might include a sort of stint on the client side, I guess.
Absolutely, because then you'll see the actual complexity of marketing and the different elements of it, and the fact that communications and advertising is actually just one portion of it compared to distribution and pricing, product design, all of those aspects of things, which people in advertising don't really think about.
Yeah.
And it's not really their job to think about it either. So I think a client-side stint probably is really useful. It will also help you when you go back into the advertising business to navigate clients' companies. I mean, I've never been on the client side on a full-time basis, so I don't have that skill, but I think it would be a very useful skill to know how marketing departments operate and how they then relate to senior management within a big business. But so it's a challenging time. I think one of the things I was going to ask you about this, actually, David.
Yeah?
Don't worry, it's not about ice cream face.
I've already failed that one.
You guys have all the data. I mean, it's a fabulous report. You've done the multiplier effect report.
Yes.
IPA, Lawrence Green and that team there, they have all the data on, despite what we've just been talking about, the continued importance of long-term thinking for brands, repetition, focus, and actually the continued power of brand advertising at home. And we're constantly, you guys are constantly promoting that. Lots of us on LinkedIn are constantly promoting that. Do you think it's been listened to by business?
I think it's been listened to by marketing teams.
Yeah.
So it's funny, actually. You've caught us right in the middle of creating the next round of the multiplier effect.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
And spoiler alert, we're calling it like the multiplier playbook. And the issue we've seen, having produced the multiplier effect and toured it and all the rest, is a huge buy-in from client-side marketers, huge interest. The issue is, for me, or one of the major issues, is the relationship between marketers and the rest of the organization, and how we sort of frame brand building. And I use the term brand building rather than brand advertising, because I agree with you. I think if we only see brand building as an advertising exercise, we've already lost the battle. But how we frame brand building in a way that makes sense for a modern, data-rich, data-driven, data-oriented business. And the word brand itself may be part of the problem. We all think in our industry and in this room that brand is this incredibly powerful force. And I think there is a lot of data to back that up, that it is still a really powerful
Huge
force.
amounts of data.
But ironically, the brand of brand is quite poor outside of the marketing department. So I think there is a real sort of tension between marketers and the rest of the business. And the point of the follow-up to the multiplier effect is, how do we help CMOs and senior marketers with that part of the equation, rather than just trying to give them more data that shows what lots of people have now shown, that there's something here and we need to be investing in the right way. It's actually further up the chain that the real blockers are, I think.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's really interesting. I think that's where the disconnect is.
All right. Okay. I've got one more.
Okay.
I've got one more that I want to sort of touch on. Well, it's actually two of them together,
Okay.
but I think they work quite nicely as a pair. So the first one is number 64. If the brands you work on don't stand for something, they'll stand for nothing. And nothing is neither memorable or motivating. And I've paired that with number 82, which is, as much as you know what the brand is for, know what it stands against. I just want to explore this idea of standing for and against something, and what you mean by that, because I guess it would be easy to sort of segue from there into a sort of purpose discussion, but I suspect you mean something quite different, or more nuanced, maybe.
Well, I think the whole purpose debate is interesting. And I think the error people, and it kind of relates to this, the error people have, I heard Mark Ritson inveighing against it. The error I think he and many others have made it is conflating purpose with goodness. Why? The word purpose, it's what your role in society is to do. Talk to Marlboro cigarettes, they will have had a purpose. You know what I mean? But it won't have been good or charity.
No, definitely not.
No. But so I think there is an important distinction there. And the industry, partially because some of the things we talked about earlier in terms of the kind of nature of the liberal bubble, almost apologetic for what it does, immediately went down it's got to be about goodness. Actually, no, it doesn't. What I think is enormously helpful for brands is to define what they're here to do and what they are, as I said, fighting for and fighting against. In fact, that came from a model a friend in China gave me. And he had this, it's a wonderful model. It's a coat of arms. And on the left, you write, what are you fighting for? On the right-hand side, what are you fighting against? And the bottom bit of the coat of arms is, what's your weapon? What are your weapons that you're in this fight? And all it does, it helps teams and brand owners go, well, what are we actually here to do? I mean, what's WARC fighting for?
Fighting for better marketing, more effective marketing.
What's it fighting against?
Crap marketing.
Okay, we can tease a bit more out of that. But you see what I mean? Immediately you go, that's what we're doing. And if you don't do that, you end up with, urban SUV ads.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. You've got to know what you're here to do. That can be completely frivolous. Better tasting biscuits and ones that don't taste a coal. I don't know, whatever it is. It can be utterly frivolous, but be very clear about that. And if you have enemies, great. Theoretical enemies. Because again, it just gives you definition. And people there's a reason football managers go into changing rooms and tell us they all bloody hate us. They're all against us. The media are scum. That's why Ferguson spent a lifetime doing that at Man U. Yeah. And they were the best team in the world at the time.
The sense of
your underdog. He managed to make them feel like underdogs, so they fought harder. Mm. It's just basic psychology. So know what you're there to do. Have a sense of purpose. Have a sense of mission. Otherwise, you're just wandering around. There's no emotion involved in it.
And from a strategy point, where should that come from? Because you would think that should be built into, a brand's DNA. But is it the role of the strategist in the agency to help surface that, or to understand that, or to bring that into the brief? Where does the strategist come into that?
I think the mistake, and some clients make it as well, they ask a consultant or agency to tell them who to be. Mm. What are we? What's our point of differentiation? What's our mission? It's completely wrong. I think the strategist's role and the agency team's role, working closely with the marketers, is to tease out from the organization who they really are, what they are really about, what their ambitions really are. Again, we're talking about going a bit upstream on that. Most of my work is in this area now. So I realize it is difficult if you're on an agency team. But that's where it comes. You can apply something, it's kind of layer on top of an organization. An organization is like an organism. It has its own character. Part of the job is to understand what that is and then shine the best light you can possibly on it. Simple as that. Tease out the truth of what's already there, shear away all the excess stuff and PowerPoint documents and corporate waffle and go, actually, you're about that. And the best way to do that time and again is to work with senior marketers and their management team beyond marketing. Mm. You want to know how human resources are operating. You want to know what the CEO thinks. That's where you need to be to really get to grips with what they're about as an organization.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's a perfect place to leave it. Charles, thank you so much for coming in. The book, as a reminder, is Chaz's 100 Things a Planner Should Know by Charles Wigley. I'd say perfect stocking filler for the strategist in your life.
Ideal. I don't think planners can live without it, David, frankly.
If you like what you heard, please do follow us on your favourite podcasting platform. And if you really liked it, please do leave us a review. Until next time, thanks for listening.